How a conflict over Taiwan could ignite the next world war. For decades, Taiwan has been a geopolitical flashpoint, with China insisting that the island is a breakaway province that must be reunified, by force if necessary. The US, while officially maintaining strategic ambiguity, has increasingly hinted at direct military intervention should China invade. But if Beijing actually makes its move, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for Asia, but for the entire world. Stage 1, the invasion begins. A Chinese invasion of Taiwan would likely be swift and overwhelming, aiming to cripple Taiwan's defenses before the world can react. The assault would begin with massive cyber attacks. China would try to paralyze Taiwan's government, military communications, and financial systems, preventing an organized response. Missile strikes, targeting airfields, naval bases, and key infrastructure to neutralize Taiwan's ability to resist. Naval blockade, cutting off Taiwan from external military aid while deploying an overwhelming amphibious assault force. Paratrooper and special forces operations, attempting to seize key government and military facilities before full-scale resistance can mobilize. Taiwan, despite being vastly outnumbered, has spent decades preparing for this scenario. Its military doctrine is built around asymmetric warfare, using mobile missile launchers, drones, and naval mines to turn the Taiwan Strait into a death trap. However, without external help, Taiwan would struggle to hold out indefinitely. Stage 2, US and Allied response. A global flashpoint. The critical question is how the US and its allies would respond. The Biden administration, along with several past US presidents, has hinted that America would intervene militarily if China invaded Taiwan. The response could unfold in several ways. Direct US military intervention. If the US commits to Taiwan's defense, it would likely begin with aircraft carrier strike groups moving into the region, launching air and missile strikes against Chinese forces. Submarine warfare, targeting Chinese naval assets to break the blockade. Cyber retaliation, disrupting China's military command systems. Arming Taiwan with advanced weapons, possibly stationing US troops on the island. This could trigger a direct US-China war, drawing in other allies such as Japan, Australia, and the UK. Limited support and sanctions. If the US avoids direct conflict but still wants to punish China, it could enforce a military blockade around China, cutting off crucial trade routes. Launch devastating economic sanctions, freezing Chinese assets and restricting exports. Provide Taiwan with weapons and intelligence but refrain from engaging directly. However, a softer response could embolden China and weaken US influence in the Pacific. China's countermeasures. If the US intervenes, China could retaliate by attacking US military bases in Japan, Guam, and South Korea, dragging those nations into the war. Using hypersonic missiles to strike US carrier groups before they reach Taiwan. Cutting off exports of rare earth minerals, crippling global tech and defense industries. At this point, the conflict could spiral into a full-scale regional war, with global superpowers on opposing sides. Stage 3, economic and cyber warfare. The silent battlefield. Even without direct military escalation, a war over Taiwan would unleash economic chaos. The global supply chain, especially semiconductor production, would be shattered. Taiwan produces over 60% of the world's semiconductors, including the most advanced chips. If production halts, the tech industry could collapse, impacting everything from smartphones to AI development. Stock markets would crash, triggering a global recession. Inflation would surge as trade routes in the Pacific become war zones. Meanwhile, both sides would escalate cyber warfare. China could attack US financial systems, disrupt power grids, and hack government agencies. The US could retaliate by shutting down Chinese communication networks and military satellites. A prolonged cyber and economic war could be as devastating as a traditional military conflict, pushing nations to the brink of collapse. Possible outcomes. What happens next? 1. Limited war and diplomatic resolution. After severe casualties and economic turmoil, both sides agree to a ceasefire. Taiwan remains self-governing but under stronger Chinese pressure. The global economy takes years to recover, and US-China relations remain hostile. 2. Prolonged conflict, regional chaos. The war drags on for years, turning the Pacific into a battleground. More nations, like India or Russia, get involved, escalating the conflict. Global trade is crippled, leading to mass unemployment and social unrest worldwide. 3. Nuclear escalation and global war. If either side faces total defeat, they may resort to tactical nuclear strikes. The conflict spreads beyond Asia, drawing in NATO and other nuclear-armed powers. A full-scale global war erupts, changing the world order forever. Final thoughts. A war that no one can win. A war over Taiwan would be one of the most dangerous conflicts in modern history. Even if it doesn't go nuclear, the economic and political fallout could reshape the world for decades. Whether through diplomacy, deterrence, or military force, preventing this war should be a top priority for global leaders, because once it starts, there may be no